Real life. Welcome to Barbecue Weekend. So glad that we get to hang out. My name is Jake, and I get to be the lead pastor around here, and so grateful that you made this part of your weekend. Let me take a quick poll. Show of hands, how many of you here need corrective lenses, right? You got glasses, reading glasses, contacts. Okay, very good. Now, how many of you don't need any help? You got 20/20 vision. Go ahead and raise your hands, and you rub it in to all of your friends and family that you're better than them, is really what you're saying. My lovely wife, Trudy, she's been wearing glasses since middle school. And as the years have gone on, her prescription has only gotten stronger and stronger to the point where if I put her glasses in front of my eyes, it has the opposite effect. What used to be clear now becomes incredibly blurry. But trust me, as people that share the road with her, you want her wearing her glasses as she drives around. Now, today we're kicking off this new series called Jesus Is, where we're acknowledging that with all the writings and all the opinions, all the TikToks and all the talking heads, our view of who Jesus really is can get blurry. Sometimes you might be reading something on your phone. You're like, man, that sounds like that could be true. Or in a conversation with a friend, they express their opinion. You're like, man, that's plausible too. But if we believe everything that everyone says about Jesus, it will be a very blurry picture. In recent research, we learned that 4 in 5 U.S. adults believe that Jesus is real, a real historical figure, but only 55% of them believe that with certainty. 71% of your coworkers and neighbors have a positive view of Jesus, associating him with words like compassion and forgiveness. But then only 35% would say they're completely certain that Jesus lived on earth, believe Jesus was entirely human and fully God, have made a personal commitment to Jesus Christ, and believe Jesus will return to earth one day. That's a significant gap between the 80% of people that believe he was real and the 35% that say they believe. Now, confusion about Jesus is not new. We're not inventing that right now. In fact, even when Jesus was walking the face of the earth, like 80% of Americans believe he did, there were a lot of rumors out there about who he was. So one day, Jesus puts it to his disciples, and to get a poll as to what they were thinking, look at what it says in a book of the Bible called Matthew. It says, when Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, who do people say that the Son of Man is? Well, they replied, some say John the Baptist, and some say Elijah. Others say Jeremiah or one of the other prophets. And then he asked them, but who do you say I am? And friends, that question right there is the single most important question you'll ever answer in your entire life. It's more important than what do you want to be when you grow up? It's more important than can we afford this? It's even more important than will you marry me? Who do you say Jesus is? Imagine right now you're having coffee with a friend and they look across the table and say, well, how would you describe Jesus? Like, who is he to you? And if you're not sure what words you would use, that's what this series is designed to do. Over the next few weeks, we want to cut through all the noise and present as clear a picture of Jesus as possible by using his own words to tell us who he is. Because if he's nothing more than a historical figure that lived a long time ago, then we can study him like Cleopatra or Napoleon. We might read an interesting biography, but their lives don't change the way I live. But if he is the Son of God, that came to earth to seek and save people just like you and me, then he deserves not only our full consideration, but also our total devotion. Today, we're going to look at Jesus is our teacher. And out of all the character aspects of Jesus, this is the one that most of the people in your life are cool with. Most people like a lot of what Jesus had to say. Now, they may not be enthusiastic about his followers or his church or his claims to be God, but a lot of people are big fans of the moral teachings of Jesus. And what we're going to do is we're going to play a quick game to make sure that we understand what Jesus said, because there is a lot of Jesus-like sayings out there, a lot of Jesus-adjacent teachings, but if we're going to believe in him as our teacher, we need to know what he actually said. So here's how the game's going to work. It's called Jesus or Someone Else. Real simple, all right? I'm going to put a quote up, and then you are gonna turn to your partner, who is the person sitting next to you right now, and you are gonna quickly, like gut reaction, guess, is that Jesus or someone else? It really is that simple. You ready? Here we go. First quote. Many who are the greatest now will be the least important then, and those who seem least important now will be the greatest then. Go ahead and confer with the person next to you, Jesus or someone else. All right. Answer is, that was Jesus. All right, Matthew 19, verse 30. All right, here we go. Second quote. Learning to love yourself is the greatest love of all. Turn to the person next to you, Jesus or someone else. Answer is someone else. Can anyone tell me who that someone else is? It is Whitney Houston. Very good. That's a lyric from Whitney. Sounds nice, just not Jesus. Quote number 3. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. All right, go ahead and confer, Jesus or someone else. The answer is, that was Gandhi. All right, Mahatma Gandhi, not Jesus, Jesus-like. Quote number 4, if you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. All right, if you try to hang on to your life, go ahead and confer. Answer is, that is Jesus, Matthew 16, 25. Here's our last one. Everything you lose is a step you take. Confer, Jesus or someone else. Answer is someone else. Does anyone know who that someone else is? Taylor Swift. All right, Taylor Swift lyric. Now, at a different kind of church, this would be the place where the preacher would give you a guilt trip about knowing more about Taylor Swift lyrics than you do about the words of Jesus. But I'm not that kind of person, all right? Hey, raise of hands. Who got 5 of 5? Anybody get all 5? All right, right here. You get a t-shirt for winning. All right, there you go. Well done. Now, what that illustrates for us is that there are a lot of things out there that sound Jesus-like, that maybe they're in the ballpark, but they're not exactly what he said. And if we're going to understand who he is as our teacher, we got to understand the actual things that he said out loud. But even more so today, what we want to know is Jesus just a teacher, or is he something more? Throughout history, people have been trying to put him in a corner saying, we believe he's a great moral teacher, we like his teachings, but do we really have to believe in him as God? We like the whole love your neighbor thing. And I like to treat others as you want to be treated. And big fan of that, don't be hypocritical, judging other people's junk without dealing with your own mess first. I like all of that, but I really have to believe that he is God himself. One of our nation's founding fathers gave it a shot. His name's Thomas Jefferson. You may have heard of him. And in a letter to a friend, he wrote, I am a real Christian, that is to say, a disciple of the doctrines of Jesus. I consider him as a great moral teacher, the greatest the world has ever seen. And that sounds like a great start until you read that 16 years later, Jefferson took a literal razor blade to the pages of the Bible, removing any mention of the supernatural. Took out all the miracles, took out all of Jesus' claims to be God, and just left the morals. Later, it was published as The Life and Morals of Jesus of Nazareth. And our question today is that allowed? Can you do that? Do you and I get to pick and choose what sounds good to us? Do we get to keep what affirms what we already thought, but then reject anything that contradicts that? Or do we have to take all of Jesus, the morals and the miracles and the claims to be God? If you have a Bible or a Bible app, I'd love to invite you to a book of the Bible called Matthew. We're going to be in chapter 11. And if you don't have either of those, don't sweat it. The verses will be on the screen next to us. But today, you are about to meet a guy named John the Baptist. And John, before Jesus hit the ground running, was a national sensation. This dude was selling out stadiums because everybody wanted to hear what he had to say. And he knew his job description was very simple. He knew his job was to get people ready for Jesus. He knew he wasn't the Savior, but he was about to do this, going so far as to utter these famous words, he, meaning Jesus, must become greater and greater, and I must become less and less. And despite all that confidence and conviction that John had, we are about to meet him in a very dark moment. A moment full of doubt, a moment full of questions about Jesus. And honestly, friends, you may feel like you're in a very similar season. That in years past, you were full of that passion and you were full of that conviction, and coming to a place like this was the highlight of your week. And honestly, that feels like a million years ago. You don't know when the last time you wanted to sing the songs. You're not even sure where you stand. And if you're in that moment right now, I want you to know you have a lot in common with John the Baptist. He's going to ask a question of Jesus, and then the way Jesus answers will not only be helpful to John, but it's going to be challenging for you and me as well. So let's jump in. Matthew 11, verse 2. It says, "Now when John heard in prison," hang on to those three words. That's going to be very important. "When he heard in prison about the deeds of the Christ, he sent word by his disciples and said to him, 'Are you the one who is to come, or shall we look for another?' And Jesus answered them, 'Go and tell John what you hear and see. The blind receive their sight and the lame walk. Lepers are cleansed and the deaf hear. The dead are raised up and the poor have good news preached to them. And blessed is the one who is not offended by me.'" There in verse 2, we find out why John is having this dark night of the soul, this existential crisis. It's because John is in jail. See, one of John's hallmarks of his leadership and ministry is that he was unafraid to say anything to anyone. He was especially good at speaking truth to power. And one day, John went a little too hard in the paint, and he called out the local governor because of his immorality. Specifically, there was a governor named Herod who had just recently started living with his brother's wife. And you thought all the drama was in the secret lives of Mormon wives. All right, no, it's like right here in the Bible too. And so John calls him out. Herod doesn't appreciate being called out, and he puts John in prison. And so John is in jail, and he's gone from preaching boldly to massive crowds to now living in solitary confinement. He used to trend on TikTok, and now he's completely irrelevant because everyone's following Jesus. And John asked this very pointed question. He says, "Jesus, are you the one?" And John was doubting Jesus' validity because his life was going badly. And it led to some serious questions. He's saying, if you're the one, then why is my life a wreck? Why are bad things happening to this good person? And again, you may find that to be familiar territory for you. From what I can tell about you right now, you are not currently in prison, but you may be out of work. And you might be walking the road of marital separation. Maybe you're attending treatment sessions for cancer, trying to wrangle a wayward teen, desperate to end this streak of friendlessness, and you too are asking, Jesus, if you're the one, why is my life so hard? And what John was experiencing is what many of us have tried to do ourselves, is that it's hard to find Jesus with a problem-centered approach. What many of us have done, and myself included, is we go through this relational problem or occupational, maybe a mental or spiritual, and we approach Jesus and saying, Jesus, are you the one that can fix this? My working assumption is that I should not be feeling this pain and shame. And so Jesus, can you be the solution to my problem? Jesus, are you the one who can help my career? Jesus, are you the one that can make her give me another chance? Jesus, are you the one that can get me out of this spiral of anxiety? And many of us we're coming to Jesus and we're saying, hey, Jesus, good news. I actually already have it figured out. I have the blueprint. I even got the renderings done. All I need your help is doing exactly what I want. But the problem is that if Jesus is God, he gets to tell us who we are. He knows what we need well before we do. He knows where we ought to go. And so if I approach Jesus so that he can give me a predetermined outcome that fits my specific solution to my life, I'm not really looking for Jesus. I'm looking for a magic wand, a magic 8-ball, a silver bullet, but I'm not looking for him. If we come to Jesus with preconditions, we'll reject him. If Jesus has to provide me my exact solution that I desire, I'm going to push him away because that's not why he showed up in the first place. You see, John was in jail and his life was at rock bottom. And he was trying to figure out if Jesus was real while he was in a jail cell. His circumstances were blurring his vision of Jesus. But he believed what many of us have believed as well. If Jesus is the one, then I wouldn't be struggling. Now, Jesus could have responded to John's question in any number of ways. He could have said, John, I thought you were a real one. I thought you believed. I thought you were on my side. I don't have time for my haters. How could you ever ask me that question? But instead, he responds with grace and clarity. Let's reread his answer. He said, go and tell John what you hear and see. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised up, the poor have good news preached to them, and blessed is the one who is not offended by me. Now, if Jesus is nothing more than the greatest moral teacher of all time, if all he has is really nice stories that make us feel warm and fuzzy, then why would anyone be offended by this ancient version of Mr. Rogers? Like, why would anyone take offense at that? Well, you see, the longer that you spend time with the teachings of Jesus, you're going to have two guaranteed experiences. Number one, every single one of us will be comforted by the teachings of Jesus. At some point, you will read something that he said, and it will give you such an incredibly comforting view of God. For instance, Jesus taught, come to me, all who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Jesus is saying that every other religious voice that you will ever find in your entire life is going to heap the burden of moral perfection on your shoulders, and you will not be able to stand up underneath that weight. Jesus is the only teacher that lets you breathe easy. He's the only one that's done all the work for you. He's the only one that gives you rest. It's incredibly comforting. Jesus also said, the very hairs on your head are all numbered. So don't be afraid. You are more valuable to God than a whole flock of sparrows. Jesus is saying that God is so aware of who you are. He knows the exact number of hairs that are on your head at this very moment. For some of us, God doesn't have to count as high as he used to, but you are still loved. It's okay. He's saying God's not some distant deity that just spun this world on its axis and then checked out. He's deeply involved in your everyday life. It's comforting. One more thing Jesus said, he said, here on earth, you will have many trials and sorrows. Jesus was always honest. But take heart because I have overcome the world. All the pain and all the shame, all the struggle and all the guilt we've experienced, the parts of life sometimes are so overwhelming it takes our breath away. Jesus has overcome them all. Jesus has overcome the betrayal of a friend because he too was betrayed. Jesus has overcome being misunderstood by his family because his mom and his siblings, they didn't get it either. He's overcome rumors and gossip and our ultimate enemy, death. And so that means that we can have deep comfort in this life knowing that it's not our job to figure it all out. He has already won. You will be comforted by what Jesus teaches, but that won't be the only thing. Every single one of us will be confronted by the teachings of Jesus. It is impossible to read everything that Jesus said without being confronted about the corruption that sin has brought to our soul. You will not be able to read all the words of Jesus without feeling called out. And if you do, you haven't read it all yet. Jesus said, you have heard that the law says love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. I mean, how many of us right now, we have someone that let us down, they disappointed us, that they always take from us and they never give anything back. And Jesus says that the road to peace is not getting even. It's not making them feel the way that we feel. Instead, it is to pray for our enemies. Now, some of you say, yeah, I pray for my enemy all the time. I pray that they choke, right? I pray that his girlfriend breaks up with him. Like, that's what I pray for. It's not really what Jesus said. He said that we're actually to pray for their good. Think about the person that you're most mad at right now, and it's praying that they have a great life. That's confronting. Jesus taught, do not judge others, and you will not be judged. Love that part. For you will be treated as you treat others. The standard you use in judging is the standard by which you will be judged. I really like that first part where I wasn't going to be judged. But then Jesus confronts the fact that I'll just speak for myself, I am incredibly gracious toward myself while I'm also very harsh toward other people. I can explain to you all the really good reasons why I behave badly. You, on the other hand, have no reasons. And Jesus says the ruler goes both ways. One more thing that Jesus said, he said, sell your possessions and give to those in need. This will store up treasure for you in heaven. If you read Jesus' teachings on money and possessions with like an authenticity and a willingness to surrender to what he said, you will find a radical open-handedness. One, if you and I actually lived out what he says, the watching world would look at us thinking they don't seem to care at all, because Jesus confronts our attachment issues. And he also confronts our view of the poor. He confronts where we find our security. None of us get out without a little confrontation. Now, there's this cultural trend that's come about to where we have started viewing anyone that confronts us or calls us out as an act of malice. What we've done is we've said, if you really love me, then you have to affirm everything that I already think and how I live and how I behave. And if you disagree with me, then that is a breaker in the relationship. But what if confrontation wrapped in truth and love is a gift for you and me? A few years ago, Trudy and I were on a double date with another couple that we love and care about. And I don't know what got into me, but through the course of dinner conversation, I thought this would be a great opportunity. These are people I trust to get some feedback on my life. And so I said, hey, do you see anything in me? You see anything in my life that's like holding me back or things that I ought to pay attention to? And honestly, between us, I just thought they'd be nice, all right? I just thought that they would say like, oh, Jake, you just care too much, all right? You're just too nice. And instead they looked across the table, they said, actually, it's like they had a list. They were just like waiting for me to give them the opportunity. And they said, when people talk to you, you don't look at them. You often look at the ground, you look around them, and it makes them feel like what they're saying doesn't matter. And then a lot of times you have an opportunity to be very sweet and loving and tender toward your life, but you almost always choose sarcasm and making fun of her, and so you should really pay attention to that. And have you like ever immediately regretted asking for feedback? And the problem is that I already knew all of that stuff. I didn't know they knew. I thought I had done a better job covering it all up. But they loved me enough to tell me the truth about me. And I'm standing here in front of you today, and I'm far from a perfect husband, but I'm a better one because they had the courage and they loved me enough to tell me the truth. Before you reject these moments that Jesus calls you out in your personal life, and before you reject all the things that he said about himself, we have to consider, why are the teachings of Jesus worth more than an inspirational quote around our coffee cup? Why do we make it the very foundation of our lives, telling us what is true about the world? It's because Jesus is more than a philosopher or a moralist or a lifestyle influencer. Jesus is God. And if it's true that Jesus is God, then he knows what we need before we do. And he knows all those desires that feel good in the moment, they often lead to regret. And he knows the words that'll restore our identity to much loved daughters and sons of God instead of obsessing over the opinions of other people. And so we're going to choose not to take our own razor blade and take what we like and discard the rest. Instead, we accept all of Jesus. I love the way author C.S. Lewis wrote. He said, I'm trying here to prevent anyone saying the really foolish thing that people often say about him. I'm ready to accept Jesus as a great moral teacher, but I don't accept his claim to be God. He has not left that open to us. He did not intend to. Friends, if you're here and you're asking a lot of questions, man, keep asking. Keep coming around. Keep asking those great questions that will open yourself up to a journey with Jesus. But you should know our prayer for you every single week is that this is the day that you take a step toward him. And when you do, you'll find that life of joy and freedom and purpose that only he can provide. Friends, let me pray for you. Father, we come to you and we want to be a group of people that aren't so stuck in our ways and demand that we be in charge. Instead, we want to surrender. We want to first receive those comforting words where you tell us who we are and how God feels about us. But then we also want to surrender to those confrontational moments where you tell us who we really are. Show us how far we have to go and treat that as a loving gift of a God that was willing to tell us the truth. God, we love you. We trust you. It's in your son's perfect name I pray. Amen.